じゃあマジさんのオフィスに来たら、いろいろとこうね、こんな昔の新聞記事とかいろいろあるんで、それちょっと説明してもらいたいんですけども、こちらは何のやつですか？
Sure. The New York Times on the front page decided to start an article, publish an article entitled "The Bad Boy of Insurance Ratings."
保険格付けのバッドボーイ。
I was a bad boy because I was providing independent, objective insurance ratings, while all the other big rating agencies were providing conflicted, paid-for ratings. I was a bad boy because they were giving all the high-risk insurance companies excellent ratings, and I was giving them the ratings that they deserved, the real ratings, which were D's and E's. I was a bad boy because the insurance companies began losing business. Their customers are saying, well, I can't buy insurance from a company that's going to fail. That's ridiculous. And so the insurance organization, the insurance association, complained to all the newspapers like the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Chicago Tribune, say, why are you quoting Weiss Ratings? Why are you publishing his ratings? He doesn't know anything about ratings. And so when the editors said, wow, all the top insurance companies are telling us not to quote Weiss Ratings, what's really going on here? Maybe we should go down to Florida and talk to him and find out. And so they did this complete story on us. And because of the complaints from the insurance companies, we became famous. They made us more famous. And so finally the insurance company PR organization and said, oh, they called our PR agent and said, truce. Here's a white flag. Let's talk. We don't want to say any bad things about you anymore. Let's get together and talk.
なるほど。
But this shows that Weiss was the only one that gave bad ratings to the companies that failed. Whereas all the other rating agencies, AM Best, Duff & Phelps, Moody's, S&P, they all gave excellent ratings. And the companies failed. And when the companies failed, 6 million insurance policyholders were stuck in failed companies. 6 million policyholders. It was a disaster.
そういうことなんですね。
Yeah.
これはもう本当明らかですね。
Yeah.
他がもう A とか A プラスとか A2 とかって出してるときに C プラスですからね、これね。もうすごい
C
D と
plus
か
was generous. That's a good rating for us.
優しいぐらいと。こっちらが D ですもんね。
Yeah.
はあ、な
But
るほ
the
ど。
proof of the pudding is that two things. Number one, all of the big insurance companies that got our bad grades failed or were taken over by their insurance regulators. None of the insurance companies that got our good grades had troubles.
なるほどね。ここがやっぱこう独立したもう完全にこう一切もういただかないですよっていう風にやってる独立した格付け会社だからこそこういう本当の格付けができるっていう
And
ことで
another
す
thing
ね。
happened. After the New York Times published this article, and after the companies failed, then the United States Congress began to ask questions. And they invited all the representatives of the insurance rating agencies to come to Washington to testify. What happened? Why did these companies fail with high grades? Well, all the other rating agencies decided not to come to Congress and testify. They didn't show up. They said, no, we don't want to go. Weiss Ratings was the only one testifying before Congress to explain what happened. And so when that happened,
なるほど
the
ね。
U.S. Congress said, what really happened here? What's going on? This is terrible. Only this little new rating agency in Florida got it right, and all the big established companies in Wall Street got it wrong? What's happened? So they asked the U.S., the Congress's bipartisan auditing agency It's a major agency that provides research to U.S. Congress called the General Accountability Office, GAO. And the GAO did a complete study, historical study, to try and understand why and how Weiss Ratings was right and all the other big rating agencies was wrong. And their conclusion was that based on the data, Weiss's ratings were 3 times more accurate than the biggest and best insurance rating agency.
なるほど。ちょっとこれカメラこっちも撮っててください。これはもう明らかなね、違いがここに出てるっていうのがわかると思います。やっぱりこうね、フィーを受け取って格付けしているところだったら議会でも表現はできないし、こういうね格付け出るんですけど、ワイスはもう真実を出すことができるんで、議会の前でも堂々と喋ることができるというのをここでね、もう思いっきり表してると思うし、だからこそバッドボーイというね、業界からはそういうレッテルを貼られるというね。
Bad boy for the insurance company, but I'm a good man for the investor and for the insurance policyholder and for the consumer.
保険の加入者とかね、そういう人たちにとってはすごいグッドボーイだけども、保険会社からしたらもうバッドボーイということですよね。はい。いやもう本当に素晴らしいですよね、これね。はい。他のやつもちょっと見ていいですか？こちらは、はい、なんですよ。
So after rating insurance companies, we diversified into other areas. And the most important area, as we discussed earlier, was stock ratings. The stock ratings, the rated companies, in the case of stock ratings, did not directly pay the research companies like Goldman Sachs or Merrill Lynch or Standard & Poor's. But there was also a very serious conflict of interest because there are 2 divisions in every major research company on Wall Street. One is the research division, which is supposed to be independent and unbiased. And the other one is the investment banking division, where they're trying to get customers to help them raise funds and bring their stocks to market. Right? Now, the investment, if the research business, if the research analyst gives a bad rating, like a sell rating, or even a hold rating, to that company stock, then the investment banker will say, well, how can I ask investors to buy this stock and raise funds for this company if our own analysts are giving it a sell rating? So the investment bankers say, hey, we can't do business this way. Stop giving them sell ratings, give them a beta rating. And some investment analysts said, well, okay, we'll cooperate. And some investors said, no, this is my opinion, and I'm not going to change my opinion because you're a business. And those investment analysts were fired. And so the same conflict of interest in the stock ratings business evolved where, for example, we were talking earlier about the boom in IT stocks, right? At the top of the IT market, in that boom, 99% of all the ratings that came out of Wall Street were buy. Maybe a few holds, no sells. Now, that was at the top of the biggest bubble in the history of technology stocks. And after that, as we discussed earlier, the average stock on the NASDAQ, which is mostly tech stocks, fell 75%. All with buy ratings. So stocks suffered the same problem. And to this very day, it's very difficult to get objective ratings about stocks in America. There are some independent companies like us. We're not the only ones, but we're probably the most accurate of all the ratings.
なるほど。なるほどですね。
But you know what? It's not good enough.
はい。何ですか?
No, it's not good enough. We want to make it better. And that's where AI is playing a very important role.
なるほど。
We're never
さらに
satisfied with it because it can never be perfect. You're always going to make mistakes, right? There are always going to be some stocks that go up when you think they're going to go down or go down when you think they're going to go up. So to reduce that risk even further, now we're deploying AI in a big way.
なるほど。はい。もうさらにもっとこう正確性とかを追求していってるわけですね。
Right.
はい。でこ
This
ち
is
らは
another. This is also about insurance,
うん。
and this is this quote, "Mr. Independence," which is about me.
おお、ミスターインディペンデンス。
This was given to me by Forbes magazine. Have you heard of Forbes
うん
magazine?
うんうん。
Forbes is one of the the leading independent magazines, and they called me Mr. Independence because we are independent. And that's a picture of me with stacks and stacks of data that we bought in those days.
あ
But in those days, we bought the data in hard copy. It didn't exist very much in the computer databases. Today, of course, all of our data is in huge databases, and we've accumulated over the last 20 years approximately 7 terabytes
ー。うん。
of data on financial data on companies, insurance companies, banks, and that database, that big database,
うん。
is a rich treasure
そうですね。
for AI.
うんうんうん。
AI loves big
なる
data.
ほど。それを学習するってことですよね、
Yeah.
ビッグデータとして。うんなるほど。
If you have only AI, that's pretty good.
うん
If you have only big data, that's pretty good. But if you have both, that's fantastic.
最高ですね、それはね。
Yeah.
はい。まあ、バッドボーイと言われるほどのね、正確性のある格付けデータで学習した AI って言ったらもうすごいことになりますよね。それが20年分のデータとしてあるわけですもんね。なるほど。じゃあこっち最後こちらの記事は何なんですかこれ。
So there, all right, the image shows that we had made the transition from that picture, that time, where a lot of our data came in on hard copy and we had stacks and stacks of papers, to computerizing. What you see there are huge, old-fashioned computer data disks, or actually data tapes.
うんうんうん。あ、そうなんです
So
ね。
we run those tapes through our big mini computer. We had a DEC
うん。
mini computer, and it read those tapes for crunching the data before hard drives.
へえ。すごい。
So, like we said earlier, Weiss is not just a financial rating agency, it's more and more a technology company. And we apply that technology not only to our ratings, but to everything we do. Even our meetings and our analysis, technology is number one.
なるほどな。
Yeah.
でもこれ初期の頃のテクノロジーってことですね、これがね。要するに。
Initial phase of technology.
What?
Initial phase of technology.
This was actually a relatively advanced stage. If you go back further in time, my first computer of the Weiss Ratings was a TI-59 programmable calculator. Texas Instruments, probably about this big, and I used to program it myself personally. Put the formulas in my dad's formulas in there and crank them out one formula at a time. Then our second revolution was what I call a hacker's computer. It was called the IMSI. IMSI was before the IBM PC and before the personal computers you use today. It was a microcomputer, and I think it was better than the IBM PC. Yeah. But it's the same computer that appeared in a very famous movie called War Games, where a young boy, a high school kid, went in there. He had his computer, and he was I don't know if you saw it. It's called War Games. It's a great movie, and that they used the same computer that we had in our. Yeah, so we've always been ahead of the game in technology. We've always had the most advanced technology. But it was expensive. It's not cheap. It's not cheap. For example, for a Corvus hard drive, which had 5 megabytes, which we thought was huge amount of data. That Corvus hard drive with 5 megabytes cost us, guess how much money in those days?
ごめんか。ちょっとレートもねあれなんでちょっとわかんないですけど、当時の価格で多分100万とかするんですか、もしかして。
like $10,000?
$10,000? How did you know?
That's
exactly what it was.
本当ですか。
Wow, he's good.
Yeah,
but in today's dollars, that would be like $40,000 or $50,000 for 5 megabytes of storage.
Yeah.
Right now, my little pen drive has like
確かに
just 15 gigs. My little pen drive has like 32 gigs or something like that.
ありますからね。
Yeah.
いやいや素晴らしい。
So the technologies continue to evolve, and it's all driven by what?
なるほど。
Data. Yeah, the more data, the richer you are in data, the richer you are in knowledge, if you can know how to mine this data, if you know how to harvest that data.
いやでも本当にワイスがテクノロジー会社っていうところの本当にこうスタートの部分としてこれが残ってるっていうのはなんか、歴史を感じるというか信頼性を感じますね、やっぱりね。やっぱこれが50年の歴史っていうことなんですよね。
Yeah, it's actually 50. I don't want to even think about it. It's now we're going on 53 years
3年とかです
since
ね。
I started Weiss Ratings, but it's been about 62 years since I began working in this industry, because I was working before I started my company. I was working with my father and his company.
そうですよね。手書き
So
の
I'm 77 now, and I started more or less when I was around 11 years old. So that means 66 years in this industry.
いや素晴らしいと思いますね。はい、ありがとうございます。
So another thing about technology is communication. We used to have to write letters back and forth and wait 2 weeks to get a response. Or if we really had a lot of money, we could afford $5 an hour for $5 a minute for an international phone call. But today, with the internet and with the high-speed connection and from across the Atlantic and across the Pacific, we can have a global company without a global offices. And so we now have our staff on 5 continents. And guess what? When we're working, when we're doing things, we're all in the same room together. On Teams, Microsoft Teams.
なるほどなるほど、そうですよね。
We don't use Zoom as much anymore. We use Microsoft Teams. And so, thanks to that technology, now we have our effectively offices or workplaces in 5 continents. I'll show you. Let me show you.
なるほど。
There's just a little map. And this shows some, it's not all of our contractors, because I have to ask my executive assistant to put more pins on here. But this shows that our primary obviously is still in North America, and some of this represents like 2 or 3 people, some of it's individuals, but it's kind of mixed. In Florida, we have still a big concentration because that's where our home was. Now our home is everywhere. We have a lot of employees in Brazil and South America because of the time zone is almost the same. Maybe 1 or 2 hours difference depending on the season. In Europe, the time zone is also very workable. From 5 hours difference in UK and Portugal to 6 hours difference in Central Europe. So that's still very workable. We can all be in the same time zone, pretty much. India starts getting a little more difficult. Southeast Asia even more difficult. And then, of course, the most difficult or Japan is now, as you know, 14 hours difference. It's actually 14 hours, actually 8 hours because, but it's 24 months. No, But the worst one of all is Australia, and we have 1 employee there. So it's difficult. So the only problem is not where we are; it's when we are in terms of the daily cycle. There's a time zone differences. But most of the time, everybody can be on the same page at the same time, no matter where they are in the world. And so we've been able to hire not just local staff here in Florida, but the very best talent in the world, anywhere in the world. I don't care where they are. I don't care what nationality they are. I don't care what their political preferences are. China, Russia, Western Europe, Japan. It doesn't matter. What's important is their talent, their ability to get into sync with our high-tech approach to analysis and research.
なるほど。はい。ちょっとカメラこっち撮ってもらえますか。
Any questions about some of this?
いやまあ質問もちょっとあるんですけど、こう見てください。このね、ちゃんと大阪にピンがついてますよね。これ我々の拠点ということですよね。はい。いやでもこれうち以外にも日本以外にもヨーロッパとか東南アジアとかオーストラリア今言いましたけども、あとここは中国かなですね。で韓国とでブラジルと、こんな感じで。
ウルグアイもいる。
いろいろやっぱね。
ファンディアルで昔ウルグアイに住んでた。
そうなんですね。いや本当にもう5大陸世界中でやってます。はい。
日本語言ってちょっ
と。いいですよ。全然日本語でもいいんですけど、マーチさんね日本語すごい堪能な方なんでね、いいんですけど、いや本当にこうワイスレーティングスすごいですよね。もう世界中で事業展開されてて、我々もね日本でやってて、1万人の読者がね、ようやく月間ワイスレーティングで出てきているということで、どんどんこう広がっているという感じですね。はい。いや素晴らしいですね。これは本当にワクワク。僕もこれ初めて見たんですけど、まさかこんなにこうね世界中で展開してるなんて思ってなかったんで、すごいなっていうふうに改めて思いましたね。
アフリカだけは今スタッフにいないん
だ。そうなんですね。
アフリカだけには。これが
なるほど。
いればやっとりたいと思います。
はい。でもこれだけ世界中でいろいろ活躍されてて、もうスタッフもだからもうその世界中からこう人を採用してアサインしてやってるっていう感じなんですね。事業を展開しているということですね。はい、ありがとうございます。じゃあマーチさんこれ僕ちょっといいのを見つけたんですけども、このバロンズの記事ね、これちょっと説明してもらっていいですか。
一つはバロンズという会社はウォール・ストリート・ジャーナルと同じ、会社ですね。
はい、これ日本でもあります。はい。
そうです。でこれが世界のアメリカの一番いい投資家向けのウェブサイトなのかと。
はい。
で一つはWeiss Ratings。でもう一つはこの他の会社なんですけど。
なるほど。でこれはどういう記事が書かれているんですか。
で一番使いやすい、一番いい、一番アキュレートなんていうか、正確、一番正確の書き付けは
Weiss Ratingsだ
ということを記事に載っている。
なるほど。でこれも皆さん本当ねバロンズって言ったらもう世界中でもやってるし、もちろん日本語でもちゃんとねバロンズを斜め読みとかなんかそういうのがやってるところで、投資の情報発信するところでいくとかなりの大手ですけれども、そこがもう格付け機関の中でこのWeissがナンバーワンだというか、すごく見やすい、使いやすいっていうふうにこう言っているという記事になりますね。これはね。
でこの2つのサイトを、試してくださいと、題名なんです。
すごいですよね。それをバロンズが言ってるっていうところが本当にすごいやっぱ信頼性のWeiss Ratingsと信頼性をこう証明してくれてるような感じになってるなと思いますね。
で先ほど申し上げたように、もう一つのバロンズの記事が出ましたけど、その題名は今Weiss is number one in identifying vulnerable companies。
っていうふうにバロンズが言ってきてくれてた。
それは別の。
これ別でしたっけ？バロンズじゃなくて。
それはバロンズだったんだけど、別の記事。
別の記事でやってくれてると。この記事はそれではないってことですね。
その記事では、その記事はウェブサイトだけについて。
これも結構昔のあれですよね。今とは全然
それは昔の古い、
だいぶ
あまり良くないウェブサイトだったんで。
あ、そうなんですか。
今の方が
今さらにもっと良くなってますよね。
さらに使いやすい、さらに正確、さらに。
いやもうどんどんアップデートされてるなっていうのを僕が知ってるからもアップデートが入ってるんで2回ぐらい入ったんじゃないかなと思うんですけど、だいぶ今さらに使いやすくなってます、ね。
私たちは昔の技術は使わないし、現在の技術も使わないし、将来の技術を使いたい。
なるほど。はい。いや本当に素晴らしいですね。もうどんどん進化しているということですね。はい。ありがとうございます。
こんにちは、Weiss Ratings Japan の安井です。動画を最後までご覧くださりありがとうございます。Weiss Ratings Japan では YouTube 上ではなかなかお伝えできない具体的、専門的なコンテンツも多数用意しています。例えば最高ランク米国株25銘柄、こちらはですね、Weiss Ratingsが最も高く評価した上位25銘柄、これをまとめた銘柄レポートです。Weiss Ratingsの格付けは A プラスから E マイナスまでの15段階で行っていますが、実は背後で動いているアルゴリズム、これはですね、より詳細に 0.00 から 9.99 の1000段階という非常に細かな基準でほぼ全ての米国株をランク付けしているんです。ここに載っているのはその1000段階の評価で今最も高く評価されている25銘柄。こちらアメリカでは有料のサービスの一部として提供されているんですが、米国株に投資して資産を築こうとされている日本の投資家のため、この動画の概要欄から無料でレポートを見ることができます。レポートは毎月一度更新されているので、一度受け取ったことがあるよという方もですね、ぜひ最新のランキングこれを確認してみてください。それでは次回の動画でまたお会いしましょう。